Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. Sometimes one stranger's compassion in a moment of crisis becomes the thread that weaves two lives together forever. Ethan Brenner was a struggling delivery driver, working midday shifts to keep his daughter fed and a roof over their heads. On a bright November afternoon in Portland, he saw a little girl collapse on the sidewalk. He didn't think twice. He ran to her, called for help, and stayed until the ambulance arrived. A stranger filmed it all. The video went viral overnight. What Ethan didn't know was that the girl was Olivia Ashland, granddaughter of a billionaire. But would saving her life pull him into a world he never imagined? Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 in the morning, the same jarring sound that had pulled Ethan Brenner from sleep for the past 3 years. He reached over and silenced it with a practiced slap, then lay still for a moment in the pre-dawn darkness. The apartment was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the distant sound of traffic. Beginning to build on the street below, Ethan pushed himself upright and swung his legs over the side of the narrow bed. The room was small, barely large enough for the bed and a dresser with 3 drawers that stuck when you tried to open them. He'd given his daughter the larger bedroom when they'd moved into this place 2 years ago, after the last apartment became too expensive. Before that, there had been a house, a real house with a yard and a garage, but that felt like another lifetime now. He stood and stretched, feeling the familiar ache in his lower back from too many hours behind the wheel. 38 years old, and some mornings he felt twice that. He moved quietly through the apartment, not wanting to wake Sophia yet. She had another hour before she needed to get up for school. In the bathroom, Ethan splashed cold water on his face and studied his reflection in the mirror. His brown hair needed a cut, grey creeping in at the temples more noticeably each month. Lines had formed around his eyes and across his forehead. Worry lines, his late wife had called them. She'd traced them with her finger once, telling him he thought too much about things he couldn't control. Melissa, 3 years gone, and the grief still ambushed him at unexpected moments. Cancer had taken her quickly, too quickly. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. They'd done everything the doctors recommended, every treatment, every experimental option. The medical bills had started arriving before the funeral flowers had wilted. They were still arriving now, relentless as the tide. Ethan dressed in jeans and a grey Henley shirt, both worn but clean. In the kitchen, he started the coffee maker, a cheap model that took forever but still worked, and opened the refrigerator. 1/2 gallon of milk, some eggs, bread, peanut butter, a package of deli turkey that would last another 2 days if he stretched it. He'd shop again on Friday when his paycheck cleared. He made himself 2 eggs and a piece of toast, ate standing at the counter while checking his phone. 3 delivery orders already queued up for the morning shift. If he hurried, he could knock out 2 before Sophia woke up. The coffee finished brewing, and he poured it into a thermos. No time to sit and savor it. He'd drink it between stops. He rinsed his plate and left it in the dish rack, then grabbed his keys and wallet from the counter. The wallet was worn leather, cracked along the fold. Inside, tucked behind his expired credit cards and a few singles, was a photograph of Melissa holding newborn Sophia at the hospital. He touched it briefly, a ritual, a prayer, then closed the wallet and slipped it into his back pocket. Before leaving, Ethan checked on Sophia. Her room was decorated with posters she'd drawn herself, colourful scenes of forests and castles and dragons. She lay curled under a quilt Melissa's mother had made, her dark hair spread across the pillow. 8 years old now, growing up too fast. She had her mother's eyes and stubbornness, and Ethan thanked God for both every day. He pulled the door almost closed, leaving it cracked so he'd hear her alarm when it went off. Mrs. Kowalski from next door would check on her in an hour, make sure she got breakfast and made it to the bus stop. The older woman had been a blessing since Melissa died, watching Sophia when Ethan's shifts ran long, never asking for payment, though he tried to give her what he could. The apartment building hallway smelled like cooking grease and pine cleaner. Ethan took the stairs, instead of waiting for the elevator, which was broken more often than it worked. Outside, the November air bit at his face. Portland mornings were getting colder, winter settling in early this year. His van sat in the parking lot, a white Ford with rust along the wheel wells and nearly 200,000 miles on the odometer. The Fresh Route logo, a green leaf and the company name in cheerful letters, was faded and peeling. He unlocked the back doors and checked the interior. Clean enough. The heating worked mostly. It would do. Ethan climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. It turned over on the third try, coughing to life with a sound that suggested imminent mechanical failure. He'd been nursing it along for months, couldn't afford repairs, couldn't afford to replace it. When it finally died, he wasn't sure what he'd do. He pulled out of the lot and headed downtown. The city was waking up around him. Headlights and streetlights in the grey dawn, people hurrying to work, to school, to whatever responsibilities pulled them from their beds. Ethan merged into traffic and felt himself settle into the familiar rhythm of the drive. This was his life now. Delivery driver for Fresh Route, barely making minimum wage after expenses. Up before dawn, home after dark most days. Cobbling together shifts, trying to pick up extra hours wherever he could find them. The work was mind-numbing but necessary. It kept them afloat, barely. The first delivery was to a downtown office building, lunch order for a morning meeting, apparently. Ethan found parking on the street, grabbed the insulated bag from the back, and jogged to the entrance. The lobby was all marble and glass, security guard at the desk. He signed in, got his visitor badge, took the elevator to the 12th floor. The receptionist who accepted the delivery barely looked at him. He was invisible in his Fresh Route vest, just another service worker passing through the gleaming world of people with real careers and salaries and futures. He smiled anyway, thanked her and left. Back in the van, Ethan checked his phone. Next delivery across town, then one more after that. If he was lucky, he'd be done by 8 and could grab a second shift for the afternoon. He needed to be home by 3 to meet Sophia's bus, but that gave him a few hours to work. He drove, delivered, drove again. The city scrolled past his windows. Neighborhoods he used to be able to afford. Restaurants he used to take Melissa to. The park where they'd push Sophia on the swings when she was small. Memory layered over reality, then and now existing simultaneously in his mind. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Kowalski. Sophia's off to school. Had breakfast. Don't worry. Ethan exhaled relief he hadn't realized he was holding. One thing going right today. He finished the morning deliveries by 9:30 and pulled into a coffee shop parking lot to check for afternoon work. 2 shifts available, one at noon, one at 2. He claimed them both, knowing he'd have to rush to make Sophia's bus, but unable to turn down the money. Rent was due in 4 days, and he was short. He was always short. The November sun climbed higher, burning away the morning clouds. Ethan drank the last of his coffee, now cold, and closed his eyes for just a moment. Exhaustion pulled at him, the kind that went deeper than lack of sleep. But there was no time for rest. There was never time. His phone buzzed again, this time a notification that his landlord, Mr. Volkov, had left a voicemail. Ethan didn't need to listen to know what it said. Same message every month around this time. Rent reminder, veiled threats about eviction if payment was late again. He deleted the notification without listening and pulled back onto the road. Midday shift started in an hour, and there were deliveries waiting. Whatever came next, he'd handle it. He always did. For Sophia, he'd do anything, work any job, swallow any amount of pride, endure any hardship. That's what fathers did. That's what Melissa would have expected of him. That's what love demanded. The Pearl District gleamed in the midday sun, all polished glass and expensive boutiques. Ethan felt out of place the moment he turned onto the cobblestone plaza. His battered van, drawing stares from well-dressed professionals sipping lattes at outdoor tables. This was money territory, the kind of neighborhood where people carried shopping bags with designer labels and discussed vacation homes over lunch. He had 3 deliveries here, all within 2 blocks. Ethan parked illegally, knowing he'd have to work fast. The parking enforcement in this district was notorious. He grabbed the insulated bags from the back and checked the addresses. First stop, a law office on the corner. Second, a tech startup 2 doors down. Third, a penthouse apartment overlooking the river. The law office delivery went smoothly. So did the tech startup, though the receptionist made him wait 10 minutes while she finished a phone call, the food getting cold in his hands. By the time Ethan emerged back onto the plaza, he was running behind schedule. The afternoon sun was warm despite the November chill, and he felt sweat gathering under his collar. He shifted the remaining delivery bag to his other hand and started toward the residential tower at the end of the block. The plaza was busy. Lunch crowds spilling out of restaurants, tourists taking photos, a street musician playing guitar near the fountain. Normal city noise, normal city rhythm. That's when he saw her, a young girl, maybe 9 or 10, walking alone with shopping bags hanging from both arms. She wore an expensive-looking coat, navy blue wool with brass buttons, and her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. She moved with the distracted air of a child lost in her own thoughts, not watching where she was going. Ethan noticed her only because she stumbled slightly on the uneven cobblestones, catching herself before falling. She paused, set down one of her bags, and pressed a hand to her chest. He was 20 feet away when she collapsed. It happened fast. One moment she was standing. The next she was on the ground, bags scattered around her, body crumpling like someone had cut her strings. A woman nearby screamed. The guitar music stopped. Ethan dropped his delivery bag and ran. He reached her in seconds, his knees hitting the brick-lined sidewalk hard enough to hurt. The girl was on her side, eyes open but unfocused, her breathing rapid and shallow. Her hand still clutched at her chest, fingers digging into the fabric of her coat. "Hey, sweetheart, can you hear me?" Ethan's voice came out steadier than he felt. He'd taken a basic first aid course years ago when Sophia was born. But this was different. This was real, this was urgent. This was a child dying in front of him. The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. Her face was pale, a sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the cool air. Ethan pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. "I need an ambulance at the Pearl District Plaza," corner of Northwest 10th and Everett. A young girl collapsed. She's conscious but struggling to breathe, clutching her chest. "Looks like a cardiac event." The dispatcher's voice was calm, asking questions, but Ethan barely heard her. He was focused on the girl, whose eyes had found his face and locked there. Terror in those eyes, pure animal terror. "You're going to be okay," he told her, his free hand moving to her wrist to check her pulse. It was racing, irregular, fluttering like a trapped bird. "Help is coming. I'm right here with you. You're not alone." A crowd had gathered, a ring of faces staring down, phones out, some filming. Ethan ignored them. The dispatcher was giving him instructions, telling him not to move her, to keep her calm, to monitor her breathing. "What's your name?" he asked the girl softly. She tried to answer but couldn't get the words out. Her breathing was getting worse, more labored, each breath a visible struggle. "It's okay. Don't try to talk. Just look at me. That's it. Keep your eyes on me." Ethan had no idea if he was doing the right thing, but he kept talking anyway, his voice low and steady. "The ambulance will be here any second. You're doing great. You're so brave." Her small hand reached up and grabbed his, squeezing with surprising strength. He squeezed back, anchoring her to consciousness, to life, to this moment. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. The crowd parted slightly, people looking toward the sound. Ethan stayed kneeling on the hard sidewalk, holding the girl's hand, feeling her pulse stutter and jump under his fingers. "Almost here," he murmured. "Hear that? They're coming for you." The ambulance pulled up onto the plaza, lights flashing, and 2 paramedics jumped out with practiced efficiency. Ethan moved back to give them room, but kept his eyes on the girl. She was watching him, still watching him, as if his face was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become untethered. The paramedics worked quickly. Oxygen mask, blood pressure cuff, questions fired at Ethan about what he'd seen. He answered as best he could, describing the collapse, the chest pain, the irregular pulse. One of the paramedics looked at the girl's wrist and froze. "Medical alert bracelet," she said sharply. "Cardiac condition. History of arrhythmia. They had her on a gurney in seconds, strapping her down, preparing to load her into the ambulance. The girl's eyes never left Ethan's face. He stepped closer, leaned down. "You're in good hands now," he said quietly. "They'll take care of you." Her lips moved again, and this time he heard the whisper, "Thank you." Then they were lifting the gurney, rolling it toward the ambulance, and she disappeared inside. The doors slammed shut. Lights and sirens screamed to life, and the ambulance pulled away. Threading through traffic with urgent speed, Ethan stood in the middle of the plaza, his knees aching, his hands trembling now that the crisis had passed. Around him the crowd was dispersing, the show over. He looked down and saw his delivery bag where he'd dropped it, the food inside probably ruined now. A police officer approached, young, professional, asking for a statement. Ethan gave his name and contact information, described what he'd witnessed, answered questions in a fog of adrenaline and shock. The officer thanked him, handed him a business card, in case he remembered anything else. When the officer left, Ethan retrieved his delivery bag and walked slowly back to his van. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Fresh Route Dispatch, 2 angry texts about the missed delivery. He'd deal with that later. He sat in the driver's seat and stared at his hands. They'd stopped shaking, but he could still feel the girl's pulse under his fingers, that frantic, desperate rhythm. He didn't know her name, didn't know if she was okay, didn't know if she'd make it. But for those few minutes on the plaza, he'd been the thing standing between her and whatever darkness had been reaching for her. He'd held her hand and told her she wasn't alone. Ethan started the van and pulled back into traffic. The city moved around him, indifferent and eternal. Somewhere that little girl was fighting for her life. And somewhere, though he didn't know it yet, a video of those moments was already spreading across the internet. A delivery driver with grease on his sleeves, kneeling on brick holding a stranger's hand. By evening, the world would know his face. By morning, nothing would ever be the same. Ethan woke to the sound of pounding on his bedroom door. Before he could fully register consciousness, the door flew open, and Sophia launched herself onto his bed, phone in hand, eyes wide with excitement. "Dad! Dad, wake up! You're famous!" He groaned and squinted at the clock. 6:15, too early for whatever this was. "Soph, what are you talking about?" She shoved the phone in his face, the screen brightness making him wince. "Look, you're all over the internet. Mrs. Kowalski showed me this morning. She saw it last night and wanted to make sure it was really you." Ethan took the phone, his brain still foggy with sleep. The screen showed a video, shaky footage shot from a distance. He recognized the Pearl District Plaza immediately, and then he saw himself kneeling beside a small figure on the ground, phone to his ear, his face tight with concentration. The video had been posted to social media 12 hours ago. Below it, a caption read, "Hero, delivery driver saves collapsing child in downtown Portland. Faith in humanity restored." The view count made his stomach drop. 2.3 million. "Oh no," he muttered. "Oh no." Sophia bounced on the bed. "Dad, this is amazing. Look at all the comments." She grabbed the phone back and started scrolling, reading aloud. "This man is a hero. We need more people like this in the world. Someone find out who he is. Look at how gentle he is with her. Made me cry. Whoever this guy is deserves a medal." Ethan sat up fully, running a hand through his hair. His phone, his own phone, sat on the nightstand, and now that he was awake enough to notice, he saw the screen lit up with notification after notification. Missed calls, text messages, social media alerts from accounts he barely used. He picked it up with a sense of dread. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. His email inbox showed 97 unread messages. "This can't be happening," he said quietly. Sophia was still scrolling through comments on her phone, reading the outpouring of praise and curiosity from complete strangers. "Everyone wants to know who you are. They're calling you the mystery hero. There's a hashtag, find the hero, and people are trying to figure out your name." Ethan's phone buzzed in his hand. Mrs. Kowalski calling. He answered. "Ethan, I've been trying to reach you for an hour." The older woman's voice carried equal parts excitement and concern. "Have you seen it?" The video? My daughter sent it to me last night, and I recognized you immediately. That was a wonderful thing you did, dear, just wonderful. I just did what anyone would do, Ethan said, his standard response to praise feeling especially hollow now. Nonsense. Most people would have walked right past. You have a good heart, she paused. But I should warn you, there are news vans outside the building. 3 of them. I think they're trying to find you. His stomach clenched. News vans? Local stations. They've been knocking on doors, asking if anyone knows the man in the video. I didn't say anything, of course, but someone will eventually. Ethan thanked her and ended the call. He looked at Sophia, who was watching him with bright, innocent excitement, seeing only the positive side of this exposure. Dad, this is so cool. You're going to be on TV. I don't want to be on TV. He swung his legs out of bed, his mind racing. I need to get ready for work. Can I stay home today? Please, everyone at school is going to want to talk about this. No, absolutely not. He softened his tone at her disappointed expression. Sophia, this is just, it's not a big deal. I helped someone who needed help. That's all. I don't need attention for it. She followed him to the bathroom, still holding her phone. But Dad, what if they want to give you a reward? The girl you saved, someone said she might be from a rich family. What if they want to thank you? I don't want a reward. He turned on the shower, hoping the sound would signal the end of this conversation. Get dressed. You need to catch your bus. But she lingered in the doorway. Mrs. Patterson called it a blessing. She said maybe this is God's way of helping us. The hope in her voice broke something in his chest. Ethan knelt down to her level. Listen to me, sweetheart. What happened yesterday was about helping someone in trouble. That's it. We're not going to get anything out of it, and we shouldn't expect to. That's not why people do good things, I know, but no buts. I need you to understand this. Can you do that for me? She nodded slowly, the excitement dimming in her eyes. He pulled her into a hug, feeling her small arms wrap around his neck. 8 years old, and already learning hard lessons about the world. After Sophia left for school, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and forced himself to look through his phone. Most of the messages were from people he barely knew, old co-workers, distant relatives, acquaintances from high school, all congratulating him, asking if it was really him in the video, wanting to know the story. There were 3 messages from reporters requesting interviews, 2 from local news stations, 1 from a regional newspaper. He deleted them all without responding. His Fresh Route supervisor had called twice. Ethan listened to the voicemail with a sinking feeling. Hey, Brenner, it's Kevin. Listen, I saw the video. Good for you, man, seriously. But we need to talk about yesterday's missed delivery. Customer complained. Call me back. So much for his heroic moment earning him any grace at work. He called Kevin back, endured a lecture about responsibility and customer service, and accepted a formal warning without complaint. He couldn't afford to lose this job. By the time he left the apartment, news vans still crowded the street, reporters standing with microphones, cameras scanning the building's entrance. Ethan pulled his hood up and kept his head down, walking quickly to his van. A reporter spotted him, or thought she did, and started moving in his direction. But he was inside the vehicle and pulling away before she could reach him. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly as he navigated toward his first delivery of the day. The video had over 3 million views now. 3 million people had watched him kneel on that plaza, had heard his voice telling a frightened child she wasn't alone. He should have felt proud. He should have felt good about the attention, about the praise, about being called a hero. Instead, he felt exposed, vulnerable, like everyone could see not just what he'd done right, but everything he was doing wrong. The unpaid bills, the missed opportunities, the constant scramble to stay afloat. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another reporter, probably. He silenced it and focused on the road. The first delivery took him to a residential neighborhood, a nice house with a manicured lawn. The woman who answered the door took one look at him and gasped. Oh my God, you're him, the hero from the video. Ethan handed her the food and tried to retreat, but she was already pulling out her phone. Can I get a picture? My friends won't believe this. I'd really rather not, please. Just one quick photo. He gave in because refusing felt more awkward than complying. She posed beside him, arm around his shoulders like they were old friends, and snapped a selfie. Then another. Then a third from a different angle. "Thank you so much. You're amazing. What you did was beautiful." Back in his van, Ethan rested his forehead against the steering wheel. This was going to be his life now, at least for a while. Recognition everywhere he went. Strangers wanting pieces of him, wanting to associate themselves with a moment that had lasted less than 10 minutes but had somehow become public property. His phone rang again. This time, he recognized the number. "Mrs. Kowalski. Ethan, dear, there's someone here to see you. A courier. He says he has an important delivery that requires your signature. Should I tell him to come back later?" "What kind of delivery?" "He won't say. Just that it's urgent and private." Ethan checked the time. He had 2 more deliveries before noon, but something in Mrs. Kowalski's voice made him change his plans. "Tell him I'll be there in 20 minutes. He finished his current delivery without incident. The customer either didn't recognize him or didn't care and drove back to his apartment building. The news vans were gone, thank God. But a Blacktown car sat at the curb, conspicuous in this neighborhood of rust and dented bumpers. A man in a dark suit stood beside the car, holding a cream-colored envelope. He looked like he'd stepped out of a different world. Polished shoes, expensive watch, the quiet confidence that came with money. "Ethan Brenner?" The courier asked. "That's me." The man handed him the envelope. "This requires your signature." Ethan signed the electronic pad the courier offered. And the man nodded, returned to his car, and drove away without another word. The envelope was heavy, expensive paper with a weight to it that suggested significance. The return address was embossed in elegant script, Ashland Estate, represented by the law firm of Sterling and Associates. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. The letter inside was formal, typed on heavy stationery that probably cost more than Ethan's entire wardrobe. He read it standing on the sidewalk, the November wind biting at his face. "Dear Mr. Brenner, on behalf of the Ashland family, I'm writing to request your presence at our offices to discuss the incident of November 14th involving Miss Olivia Ashland. The family wishes to express their gratitude in person for your swift action and compassionate care during a medical emergency. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting. We are available to accommodate your schedule and can arrange transportation if needed. The matter we wish to discuss is of a sensitive and private nature. We respectfully request your discretion regarding this correspondence. With sincere regards, Philip Sterling, Senior Partner, Sterling and Associates." A phone number was printed at the bottom, along with an address in downtown Portland. Ethan read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and returned it to the envelope. His mind raced through possibilities, each one landing on the same uncomfortable conclusion. They wanted to give him money. The thought made his skin crawl even as another part of him, the desperate, practical part, calculated what a reward might mean. Rent paid on time, Sophia's field trip covered, maybe even car repair so he wouldn't have to hold his breath every time he turned the ignition. But accepting money for helping someone felt wrong. Transactional, like putting a price on basic human decency. He climbed back into his van and sat staring at the envelope. 3 days until rent was due. Mr. Volkov's patience had worn thin months ago. One more late payment, and he'd follow through on his eviction. Threats. Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed the number on the letter before he could talk himself out of it. A professional. Female voice answered on the second ring. "Sterling and Associates, how may I direct your call?" "This is Ethan Brenner. I received a letter requesting a meeting." "Of course, Mr. Brenner. Mr. Sterling has been expecting your call." "Please hold." Classical music filled his ear. Ethan waited, his free hand drumming against the steering wheel. "Mr. Brenner," a man's voice now, cultured and measured. "Thank you for calling. I'm Philip Sterling. I represent the Ashland family. Your letter said you wanted to meet?" "Yes. Would tomorrow afternoon be convenient?" "Say 2 o'clock. Ethan checked his mental schedule. He'd have to rearrange deliveries, probably lose a few hours of pay. I can do that. Excellent. Our office is downtown. I'll have our receptionist send you the address and parking information. Mr. Sterling? Ethan hesitated. What exactly does the family want to discuss? A pause on the other end. I think it would be better to have that conversation in person, Mr. Brenner. I will say that the Ashland family is deeply grateful for what you did for Olivia. They wish to express that gratitude appropriately. There it was. Money had to be. I don't want a reward. I understand. However, I would still encourage you to attend the meeting. What the family wishes to discuss is somewhat more complex than a simple thank you. Another pause. And I should mention that Olivia has been asking about you. About the man who stayed with her. That hit differently. Ethan's resistance wavered. She's okay? She recovered? She's home from the hospital and doing well, thanks to your intervention. The doctors said your quick response likely saved her life. Ethan closed his eyes, relief washing through him. He'd spent the past day and a half wondering, worrying, imagining the worst. I'm glad she's okay. So you'll come tomorrow? Yes, 2 o'clock. After ending the call, Ethan sat in the van for another 10 minutes trying to order his thoughts. A text arrived with the address and instructions for parking validation. The office was in one of those glass towers he'd delivered to 100 times, but never actually entered as anything other than hired help. He drove to his next delivery on autopilot, his mind elsewhere. The customer recognized him from the video. They always did now, and wanted to chat, wanted details, wanted to be part of the story. Ethan smiled politely and extracted himself as quickly as possible. By the time he picked up Sophia from school that afternoon, he'd decided not to tell her about the meeting. No point in getting her hopes up about something that might amount to nothing. But she noticed his distraction immediately. "What's wrong, Dad?" "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Just thinking about work." They stopped at the grocery store, the cheap one across town, where things were almost affordable. Ethan had $40 to last until Friday, which meant careful calculations and generic brands, and telling Sophia no when she asked for the cereal with the cartoon character on the box. She didn't complain. She never did. That hurt worse than if she'd thrown a tantrum. That evening, while Sophia did homework at the kitchen table, Mrs. Kowalski knocked on the door. Ethan opened it to find her holding a casserole dish covered in foil. "I made too much," she said, which was her standard excuse for feeding them. "Chicken and rice." "Still warm." "Mrs. Kowalski, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She pressed the dish into his hands. "You're a good man, Ethan Brenner. Don't let anyone tell you different." He thanked her, fighting the thickness in his throat. After she left, he and Sophia ate the casserole, which was delicious and probably cost more to make than Mrs. Kowalski could easily afford. Another kindness he couldn't repay. Later, after Sophia was asleep, Ethan stood in the bathroom staring at his reflection. He needed a haircut. His shirt had a stain on the collar he hadn't noticed until now. His face looked older than his years. Exhaustion and stress etched into every line. This was the man who would walk into Sterling and Associates tomorrow. Not polished, not impressive. Just a delivery driver with holes in his shoes and an overdrawn bank account. What did the Ashland family see when they looked at the video? What did they think he wanted from them? Ethan pulled his wallet from his pocket and opened it. Melissa's photo smiled up at him, young, healthy, whole. She'd always been better at navigating difficult situations, better at reading people, better at knowing the right thing to do. "I don't know what I'm walking into," he whispered to the photo. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing." She didn't answer, of course. She never would again. He was on his own with this decision, just as he'd been on his own with every decision since the cancer took her. Ethan closed the wallet and returned it to his pocket. Tomorrow, he'd put on his one decent shirt and drive downtown and find out what the Ashland family wanted. He'd be polite. He'd be honest. And if they tried to give him money, he'd refuse. Probably. The uncertainty gnawed at him as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Pride versus practicality. Principle versus survival. The eternal struggle of his life boiled down to a single meeting with people who existed in a world so far removed from his own, they might as well be from another planet. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, his dreams were confused. Melissa and Sophia and a little girl with frightened eyes, all of them asking him questions he couldn't answer. Morning arrived too quickly. Ethan went through his routine by muscle memory: coffee, toast, checking on Sophia, preparing for deliveries. But his mind was already downtown, already sitting in that office, already facing whatever came next. At 1:30, he changed into his good shirt, a button-down he'd worn to Melissa's funeral and hadn't touched since. It was slightly too big now. He'd lost weight over the past 3 years. He tucked it into his least faded jeans and studied himself in the mirror. Good enough. It would have to be. Sophia was at school. Mrs. Kowalski knew he'd be gone for a few hours. The van started on the first try, which felt like a good omen. Ethan drove downtown, his hands steady on the wheel, his heart beating a rhythm that felt like both anticipation and dread. Whatever the Ashland family wanted, whatever they had to say, he'd face it the same way he faced everything else, one moment at a time, doing his best, trying not to fall apart. The glass tower rose ahead of him, catching the afternoon sun, gleaming with wealth and power and everything Ethan had never been and never would be. He parked, fed coins into the meter and walked inside. The lobby of Sterling and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor, all marble and polished wood and understated elegance. Ethan's footsteps echoed as he crossed to the reception desk, where a woman in a tailored suit greeted him with a professional smile. "Ethan Brenner," he said. "I have a 2 o'clock with Mr. Sterling." "Of course. Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." The waiting area featured leather chairs that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Ethan sat carefully, aware of his worn jeans and borrowed confidence. Around him, people moved with purpose, lawyers in expensive suits, clients who belonged in spaces like this. He felt like an imposter. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Ethan checked his phone repeatedly, calculating how much work time he was losing, how much money this meeting was costing him. At 2:30, a young man in a grey suit approached. "Mr. Brenner, please follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with closed doors, bearing brass nameplates. The young man stopped at a corner office and knocked once before opening the door. "Mr. Brenner is here." The office beyond was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Behind a mahogany desk sat a man in his 50s, silver hair, sharp suit, the posture of someone accustomed to authority. But it was the other man in the room who captured Ethan's attention. He sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, and even seated, his presence dominated the space. 70 or older, with white hair and a lined face that spoke of both privilege and sorrow. He wore a 3-piece suit in charcoal grey, and his hands, resting on the arms of the chair, held a gold pocket watch, which he turned over and over with his fingers. "Mr. Brenner." The man behind the desk stood and extended his hand. "Philip Sterling." "Thank you for coming." Ethan shook his hand, then turned to the older man who had also risen. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in the man's eyes, the weight he carried. "Lawrence Ashland," the older man said, his voice deep and measured. "Olivia's grandfather." They shook hands, and Lawrence's grip was firm despite his age. "Please sit." Ethan lowered himself into the remaining chair, acutely aware of both men studying him. Sterling returned to his desk, while Lawrence settled back into his seat, still fidgeting with the pocket watch. "Mr. Brenner," Lawrence began, "I want to start by thanking you. What you did for my granddaughter." His voice caught slightly. He paused, composed himself. "You saved her life. The doctors were very clear about that. Without your immediate response, Olivia would not have survived. I'm just glad she's okay," Ethan said quietly. "How is she doing?" "She's home, recovering. The doctors have adjusted her medications and are monitoring her closely." Lawrence leaned forward. "She asks about you, about the kind man who stayed with her. She remembered your voice, your reassurance. It meant something to her." The words settled uncomfortably in Ethan's chest. He hadn't expected the girl to remember, hadn't thought about the impact beyond the immediate crisis. "I'm grateful she's better," he said. "That's all I wanted." Sterling cleared his throat. "Mr. Brenner, The Ashland family would like to express their gratitude in a tangible way. He opened a folder on his desk and removed a check, which he slid across the surface toward Ethan. Ethan didn't touch it, but he could see the amount, $50,000. His breath caught. 50,000, more than he made in 2 years. Enough to pay off the medical debt, cover rent for months, fix the van, give Sophia everything she needed and more. I can't accept this, he heard himself say. Lawrence raised an eyebrow. Mr. Brenner, I didn't help your granddaughter for money. I helped her because she needed help. Ethan forced himself to look away from the check. Taking money for that would make it something it wasn't. This isn't payment for service, Lawrence said carefully. This is gratitude. This is acknowledgement of a debt we can never truly repay. You don't owe me anything. Sterling shifted in his chair. Mr. Brenner, perhaps you don't fully understand your situation. The medical bills alone. How do you know about my medical bills? Ethan's voice sharpened. An uncomfortable silence fell. Sterling and Lawrence exchanged a glance. We did our research, Lawrence said finally. When someone saves your granddaughter's life, you want to know who they are. We learned about your wife, your struggles, your circumstances. He paused. We know you're barely keeping your head above water. The invasion of privacy stung, but Ethan couldn't entirely blame them. In their position, he might have done the same. That's my business. My struggle. I'll handle it. By working yourself to exhaustion. By choosing between rent and food. Lawrence's tone wasn't mocking. It was genuine concern. Mr. Brenner, there's no shame in accepting help. There is, when it's for doing the right thing. What happens the next time I see someone who needs help? Do I hesitate because I'm thinking about what it might get me? Ethan shook his head. I can't let that happen. Lawrence studied him for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise giving way to respect. You really mean that? Yes, sir. Even knowing what this money could do for your daughter. The words hit hard because they went straight to Ethan's deepest vulnerability. He thought of Sophia's worn shoes, the field trip she'd miss, the 1,000 small deprivations she never complained about. $50,000 would change her life. His hands trembled slightly. Even knowing that, Lawrence set the pocket watch on the arm of his chair and leaned back. Mr. Sterling, would you give us a moment? The lawyer looked uncertain, but nodded and left the office, closing the door behind him. When they were alone, Lawrence's formal demeanor softened. Tell me about your daughter. The question caught Ethan off guard. Sir? Your daughter. Sophia, isn't it? Tell me about her. Ethan hesitated, then found himself talking about Sophia's love of drawing, her kindness, her resilience, about how she never complained even when things were hard, about how she reminded him of Melissa every single day. Lawrence listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly thoughtful. When Ethan finished, the older man nodded slowly. I lost my wife 10 years ago, Lawrence said quietly. Cancer like yours. And 6 months ago, I lost my son and daughter-in-law in a car accident. Now I'm raising Olivia alone. He picked up the pocket watch again, ran his thumb over its engraved surface. This was my father's, his father's before that. 4 generations. I used to think legacy was about passing down objects, money, property. Now I know better. I'm sorry for your losses, Ethan said. We share similar pain, you and I. Different circumstances, same fundamental challenge. Raising a daughter without her mother. Trying to give her stability in an unstable world. Lawrence met his eyes. The difference is I have resources. You have character. I'm not anyone special. You're exactly what I've been searching for. Lawrence stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Mr. Brenner, I don't want to give you money as a reward. I want to ask you something far more important. Ethan's pulse quickened. What? Lawrence turned from the window. Olivia needs more than I can give her. She needs connection with someone who understands struggle, who knows that kindness isn't conditional. She needs normalcy. He paused. I'd like you and Sophia to visit. To spend time with Olivia. To be, he searched for the word, friends with our family. Of all the things Ethan had expected, this wasn't among them. You want us to visit? Yes, regularly. Let the girls get to know each other. Let Olivia see how a real family operates, not one built on money and isolation, but one built on love. Lawrence's voice carried a note of desperation beneath its control. I'm 73 years old, Mr. Brenner. I won't be here forever. Olivia needs to know there are good people in the world. People like you. Ethan struggled to process this. I don't know what to say. Say you'll come to dinner. This Saturday. Bring Sophia. Let's see if the girls connect. Lawrence smiled faintly. And if they do, perhaps we can arrange more visits. Nothing formal. Just friendship. It felt like too much and somehow exactly right at the same time. Ethan thought of Sophia's loneliness, the way she lit up around other children. Thought of what it might mean for her to have a friend. Okay, he said finally. We'll come to dinner. Saturday arrived, wrapped in cold rain. Ethan spent the morning cleaning the van's interior, scrubbing at stains that had been there so long they'd become part of the upholstery. Sophia sat on her bed, cycling through every outfit she owned, unable to decide what to wear to meet a girl who lived in a mansion. The blue dress? She called out for the third time. The blue dress is perfect, Ethan answered, though he'd said the same about the previous two options. She appeared in his doorway wearing jeans and a sweater instead. I don't want her to think I'm trying too hard. Ethan smiled. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Olivia's going to love you. What if she doesn't? What if we have nothing in common? The anxiety in her voice was real, deeper than simple nervousness. He knelt down to her level. Then we'll have a nice dinner and come home. No pressure. But I have a feeling you two are going to get along just fine. The Ashland estate was in the West Hills, accessible by a winding road that climbed above the city. Security gates marked the entrance, and Ethan gave his name to the guard, who checked a list and waved them through. The driveway stretched for what felt like half a mile, cutting through manicured grounds that probably required a full-time staff. Dad, Sophia breathed, her face pressed to the window. It's like a castle. The house, though calling it a house felt insufficient, rose before them in stone and glass. 3 stories, ivy climbing the walls, perfectly symmetrical windows reflecting the grey sky. Ethan parked near the front entrance, suddenly very aware of his van's rust and dented bumper. A woman in her 60s opened the door before they could knock. She wore a simple dress and cardigan, her silver hair pulled back, her smile warm and genuine. You must be Mr. Brenner and Sophia. I'm Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper. Please come in out of the rain. The interior was overwhelming. Marble floors, a grand staircase, artwork that looked like it belonged in museums. But Mrs. Chen led them past all of it to a sunroom at the back of the house, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked gardens that stretched toward distant trees. Lawrence stood as they entered, and beside him, perched on the edge of a sofa, was a small girl with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a purple sweater, and when she saw Ethan, her eyes went wide with recognition. You're him, Olivia said softly. The man from the plaza. Ethan's throat tightened. Hi, Olivia. I'm glad to see you're feeling better. She stood slowly, and he noticed the careful way she moved, still recovering, still fragile. But her smile was genuine as she looked at Sophia. Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm Sophia. His daughter's nervousness had evaporated, replaced by gentle curiosity. That's a really pretty sweater. Thanks. I like your shoes. And just like that, the tension broke. The girls gravitated toward each other with the easy magnetism of children who sensed a potential friend. Within minutes, they were sitting together on the floor, Olivia showing Sophia a puzzle she'd been working on. Lawrence gestured for Ethan to join him by the windows. They stood side by side, watching the girls, and for a moment neither spoke. She looks like her father, Lawrence said finally. Same eyes, same smile. His voice carried the weight of grief still raw despite months of time. I see him in her every day, and it's both a blessing and a torture. I know what you mean, Ethan said. Sophia has her mother's laugh. Sometimes I hear it and forget just for a second that Melissa's gone. They watched Olivia explain something about the puzzle, her hands moving expressively and Sophia nodding with genuine interest. The girls' voices created a soft background music, the sound of connection forming. I lost my son and his wife on a Tuesday, Lawrence continued, his eyes never leaving Olivia. Car accident on the interstate. Black ice. The police said it was instant. They didn't suffer. As if that makes it better. He paused. Olivia was at school. I had to pick her up and tell her that her whole world had ended. Ethan didn't know what to say. The magnitude of that loss, both parents at once, was beyond anything he could imagine. She stopped talking for 2 weeks, Lawrence went on. Completely silent. The grief counselor said it was normal, that she'd come back when she was ready. But I was terrified she'd stay locked inside herself forever. He turned to face Ethan. Then one morning she came downstairs and asked for pancakes. Just like that, as if the silence had never happened. Children are resilient. They are. But they're also more fragile than we want to believe. Lawrence's gaze returned to Olivia. She started having nightmares again. Wakes up crying, asking for her mother. The doctors say her heart condition is exacerbated by stress. Every time she's upset, I worry it could trigger another episode. I'm sorry. That must be terrifying. It is. Lawrence's hands found the pocket watch in his vest, turning it over as he had in the office. I have all the money in the world, Mr. Brenner, but I can't buy her peace. I can't buy her a mother. I can't even buy her genuine friendship. Everyone her age at that private school treats her differently because of who she is. Sophia's laughter rang out, bright and uninhibited. Olivia was giggling too, both girls delighted by something in their puzzle. She hasn't laughed like that in months, Lawrence said quietly. Dinner was served in a dining room, only slightly less formal than a museum gallery. Mrs. Chen had prepared roasted chicken with vegetables, and to Ethan's relief, the atmosphere remained casual despite the elegant surroundings. The girls sat together, whispering and giggling, while Lawrence asked Sophia gentle questions about school and her interests. I like to draw, Sophia said. Animals, mostly. And sometimes castles and dragons. Olivia's face lit up. I draw too. Want to see my sketchbook after dinner? Really? Yes. After the meal, the girls disappeared upstairs with Mrs. Chen's supervision, leaving Ethan and Lawrence alone with coffee. The older man led them to a study lined with books, where a fire crackled in the fireplace despite the season. Your daughter is remarkable, Lawrence said, settling into a leather chair. Compassionate, bright, good-hearted. You've done well raising her alone. I'm just trying not to mess her up too badly. You're being too modest. Lawrence sipped his coffee. She's well-adjusted, confident, kind. That doesn't happen by accident. They talked for an hour about parenting, loss, the daily struggles of single fatherhood. Lawrence shared stories of his son, of the man he'd been, the father he'd become. Ethan talked about Melissa, about her strength during the illness. Her determination to see Sophia through as many milestones as possible before she died. She made me promise, Ethan said, that I'd always put Sophia first, that I wouldn't let the grief paralyze me, that I'd find ways to show her joy even when things were hard. You've honored that promise. I've tried. When the girls returned, both were smiling, Olivia clutching a sketchbook to her chest. She showed her grandfather a page, a drawing of 2 girls holding hands under a rainbow. Sophia and me, she explained. As best friends, Lawrence's eyes glistened. It's beautiful, darling. On the drive home, Sophia couldn't stop talking. She's so nice, Dad. And her drawings are really good, better than mine even. She invited me back next weekend. Can we go, please? We'll see, Ethan said, but he was already planning to say yes. His phone buzzed. A text from Lawrence, thank you. You've given Olivia something I couldn't. Hope that friendship is still possible. Please come again. Saturday, same time? Ethan replied, we'll be there. Over the next month, Saturday visits became routine. The girls grew inseparable, their bond strengthening with each encounter. They drew together, played games, explored the extensive grounds. Olivia taught Sophia about the plants in the garden. Sophia taught Olivia card games and hand-clapping rhymes, and the adults found their own connection. 2 men from vastly different worlds united by loss and love for their daughters. Lawrence began calling Ethan midweek just to talk. Ethan found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone since Melissa died. You're good for us, Lawrence said one evening as they watched the girls through the sunroom window. Both of you. You've reminded us what family is supposed to feel like. Ethan felt the same. For the first time since Melissa's death, their world felt less lonely, but in the back of his mind, a quiet anxiety lingered. This arrangement felt too good, too fragile. People from different worlds didn't really belong together. Eventually, reality would reassert itself. Eventually, something would break. 2 months into their friendship, on a cold January evening, Lawrence called Ethan with unusual urgency in his voice. "Can you come by tomorrow? Alone, if possible. There's something I need to discuss with you." The seriousness of his tone made Ethan's stomach tighten. "Is Olivia okay?" "She's fine. This is about something else. Something important." Ethan arranged for Mrs. Kowalski to watch Sophia after school and drove to the estate the next afternoon. Lawrence met him in the study, and Ethan immediately noticed the older man looked frailer than usual, paler, moving more carefully. "Are you feeling all right?" Ethan asked. Lawrence gestured to the chairs by the fireplace. "Sit, please." They settled into the leather seats, and Lawrence spent a long moment staring into the flames before speaking. When he did, his voice was steady but heavy with significance. "I've been seeing doctors, specialists, getting second and third opinions." He paused. "My heart is failing, Ethan. The same condition Olivia has, only in my case, it's progressed too far for intervention." The words landed like physical blows. "What are they saying?" 2 years. Maybe 3 if I'm fortunate." Lawrence met his eyes. "I'm telling you this because what I'm about to ask requires you to understand the timeline." Ethan's mind raced. "Whatever you need, let me finish." Lawrence leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "I've spent these past months watching you with Olivia, watching you parent your daughter, observing your character, your patience, your integrity. I've watched Olivia transform from a withdrawn, grieving child into someone who laughs again, who looks forward to weekends, who talks about Sophia like she's the sister she never had. They're good for each other. They are. And you," Lawrence's voice grew thick, "you've become something I didn't expect. A friend, someone I trust, someone who sees Olivia as a child first and an heiress second." Ethan didn't know where this was going, but anxiety coiled in his chest. Lawrence stood and walked to his desk, returning with a folder bound in leather. He set it on the table between them. "I've had my attorneys draw up papers. Legal documents that I need you to consider very carefully." "What kind of documents?" "Guardianship papers." Lawrence's gaze never wavered. "I'm asking you to become Olivia's legal guardian when I die." The study fell silent, except for the crackling fire. Ethan stared at Lawrence, certain he'd misheard. "You're asking me to take responsibility for Olivia when I'm gone, to raise her alongside Sophia, to be the father she'll need." Lawrence opened the folder, revealing pages of legal text. Not adoption, that would complicate inheritance matters, but legal guardianship with full decision-making authority over her care, education, medical treatment, everything. Ethan's hands gripped the chair arms. "Mr. Ashland, I'm nobody. I drive a delivery van. I can barely keep my own daughter fed. How could I possibly—" "You're exactly who she needs." Lawrence's intensity burned through his formal demeanor. "Don't you see? I don't need someone with money to raise Olivia. The trust fund will provide for her material needs for the rest of her life. What she needs is someone with character, someone who will love her for who she is. Someone who already does. There must be family. Relatives who— there are relatives. Distant cousins who've never shown interest in Olivia until they realize she'll inherit everything. People who see her as a meal ticket, not a child." Lawrence's jaw tightened. "I've spent considerable time and money investigating options. Every one I've considered has failed in some fundamental way. Everyone except you." Ethan stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Beyond the glass, the ground stretched into darkness. His reflection stared back at him, a working-class man in a borrowed coat, being asked to take responsibility for a billionaire's granddaughter. "This is insane," he said quietly. "Is it? You saved her life once already. I'm asking you to continue saving it in a different way." Lawrence joined him at the window. Olivia needs stability, love, normalcy. She needs what Sophia has, a parent who puts her first, who makes sacrifices without resentment, who teaches her that worth isn't measured in dollars. I can't give her the life she's used to. She doesn't need this life. She needs family. Lawrence's voice dropped. I know what I'm asking. I know it's enormous. But I've watched you for months, Ethan. I've seen how you are with her. How she lights up when you arrive. How she asks your opinion on things. You're already halfway to being her father. I'm just asking you to make it official when the time comes. Ethan turned to face him. What does Olivia think about this? She doesn't know yet. I wanted your answer first, but I believe she'd be happy. She talks about you constantly. About Sophia. About wishing you were around more often. The weight of the decision pressed down on Ethan's shoulders. His life, already precarious, already stretched thin, would become infinitely more complicated. The scrutiny, the responsibility, the legal implications. But he thought of Olivia's face when she'd shown him her drawings. The way she'd hugged him goodbye last Saturday, whispering thank you for coming, like his presence was a gift. The sister bond forming between her and Sophia. There's financial support built into the arrangement, Lawrence continued. The guardianship comes with a house, not this estate, but a proper home in a good neighborhood. A trust fund designated specifically for living expenses, while Olivia is in your care. You wouldn't have to struggle anymore. This isn't about money. I know. That's why I'm asking you. Lawrence returned to his desk and pulled out another document, this one bearing Ethan's name and a dollar figure. But I'm not naive. You can't care for 2 children while working 80 hours a week. The support ensures you can actually be present in their lives. Ethan looked at the number and felt dizzy. It wasn't extravagant, not by Ashland standards, but it was more than enough to live comfortably. To give both girls stability, I need time, he said. It's too much to process right now. Of course! Take whatever time you need. Lawrence closed the folder. I should tell you that the attorneys have done their due diligence. Background checks, financial review, character references. Everything came back exemplary. Legally, there would be no impediments. You investigated me. I had to. For Olivia's sake. Lawrence didn't apologize. Would you have expected less? No, Ethan wouldn't have. In Lawrence's position, he'd have done the same. They stood in silence, the enormity of the conversation settling between them. Finally, Lawrence spoke again, his voice softer. I'm dying, Ethan. That's not a metaphor or exaggeration. My time is finite and diminishing. I need to know that Olivia will be protected, that she'll have someone who sees her, really sees her, the way you do. He paused. You don't have to decide tonight. Think about it. Talk to Sophia if you want. But please, consider it seriously. Ethan nodded slowly. I will. I promise. He drove home in a daze, Lawrence's words echoing in his mind. Guardian, father, responsibility for a child who wasn't his own, but who had somehow become precious to him anyway. At home, Sophia was doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up when he entered, and her smile faltered at his expression. Dad? What's wrong? He sat across from her, trying to find words. How would you feel if Olivia became part of our family? Permanently? Her eyes went wide. Like she'd live with us? Maybe, someday, would that be okay? Sophia's face split into a grin. That would be amazing. She's like my sister already. Then her smile faded. But why would she come live with us? Ethan chose his words carefully. Mr. Ashland is sick. He might not be around forever. And if something happens to him, he wants to make sure Olivia has family to take care of her. So we'd take care of her. If I agree. If you're okay with it. Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. Of course I'm okay with it. She needs us, Dad, and we need her too. The simplicity of her answer cut through all his complicated doubts. Children saw things clearly. Need and love and family weren't complex equations. They were simple truths. That night, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling. In his mind, he saw 2 possible futures branching from this moment. In one, he declined, stayed safe in his small life, and Olivia went to some distant relative who might or might not love her properly. In the other, he accepted, took a leap into the unknown and became father to two daughters instead of one. Both futures terrified him. But only one felt right. 3 days later, Ethan called Lawrence and gave his answer. Yes, the legal process began immediately. Attorneys filed paperwork. Social workers scheduled home visits to evaluate Ethan's living situation and parenting capabilities. Background checks were run, references contacted, every aspect of his life examined under a microscope. Ethan expected scrutiny from the legal system. What he didn't expect was the media attention. Someone, a clerk, a paralegal, someone in the chain of documentation, leaked the guardianship filing to the press. Within 24 hours, the story exploded across news sites and social media. Viral hero to become billionaire heiress guardian. Read one headline. From delivery driver to instant wealth, the modern fairy tale, proclaimed another. The comment sections were vicious, obviously after her money. This is disgusting. He's using a sick old man and a vulnerable child. Gold digger. Plain and simple. Ethan stopped reading after the first dozen comments, but the damage was done. His phone rang constantly, reporters requesting interviews, strangers calling to offer opinions he hadn't asked for. Distant acquaintances suddenly interested in his life. At Sophia's school, the other children started whispering. One afternoon, she came home with tears in her eyes. Jeremy said, "You're a gold digger. He said you only want Olivia's money." Her voice shook with anger and hurt. I told him that wasn't true, but he just laughed. Ethan pulled her close, fury rising in his chest. Jeremy doesn't know anything about us. Neither do any of those people online. They don't matter, but everyone's saying it. Let them say it. We know the truth. He tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. I'm doing this because Olivia needs family. Because you and she love each other. Because it's the right thing to do. That's all that matters. But the attacks continued and intensified. A particularly cruel blog post detailed Ethan's financial struggles, painting him as desperate and opportunistic. Someone found and published Melissa's medical bills, using them as evidence of his motivation. The scrutiny began to affect his work. Customers recognized him, made comments. His supervisor received complaints about having that guy making deliveries. Kevin called him in for a conversation that was technically supportive, but carried an undercurrent of concern about the company's image. Through it all, Lawrence remained steadfast. He gave several interviews defending Ethan's character, describing him as the most honorable man he'd ever met. But his words seemed to carry little weight against the tide of public opinion. Then Lawrence's nephew appeared. Ethan first heard about Gerard Ashland from Philip Sterling, who called one evening with barely concealed frustration. "We have a problem." Lawrence's nephew has filed a legal challenge to the guardianship arrangement. He's claiming you're unfit, and that, as blood family, he should have priority custody of Olivia. I've never even heard of this person. That's because he hasn't visited Olivia once since her parents died. Hasn't called. Hasn't sent so much as a birthday card. Sterling's disgust was evident. But now that there's publicity, suddenly he's concerned about family legacy. The legal battle erupted with stunning speed. Gerard Ashland hired expensive attorneys who filed motion after motion. They painted Ethan as financially unstable, emotionally manipulative, and potentially dangerous. They questioned his judgment, his background, his fitness as a parent. The court dates began. Depositions. Testimonies. Ethan sat in conference rooms, answering invasive questions about his marriage, his debts, his parenting choices. Gerard's attorneys were relentless, twisting innocent facts into damning implications. You've been evicted from 2 residences in 3 years. We had to downsize after my wife's medical bills. Yes or no, Mr. Brenner? 2 evictions. Yes. And you currently work minimum wage. I work as much as I can to provide for minimum wage, yes or no? Yes. They made him sound incompetent, irresponsible, the kind of person who couldn't possibly be trusted with a vulnerable child. Meanwhile, Gerard gave interviews portraying himself as Olivia's devoted uncle, concerned about her falling into the wrong hands. He was polished, articulate, saying all the right things about family bonds and protecting innocence. The media ate it up. Public opinion began shifting. Maybe the working-class hero wasn't so heroic after all. Maybe the rich family member had a point. Lawrence's health deteriorated under the stress. He was hospitalized twice for minor cardiac events. Each time Ethan visited, finding the older man weaker, more fragile, but no less determined. "Don't you dare give up," Lawrence whispered from his hospital bed after the second admission. "Olivia needs you. She chose you." That matters more than Gerard's blood relation, but the strain was crushing. Ethan lay awake nights wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. If fighting for this was selfish rather than selfless. If he was putting his own daughter through trauma for nothing. Sophia felt the weight too. She stopped talking about school, stopped drawing, grew quiet in ways that reminded Ethan too much of the months after Melissa died. One evening, he found her sitting on her bed staring at nothing. "Hey, sweetheart, you okay?" She looked up and he saw she'd been crying. "Are we going to lose Olivia?" The question broke his heart. "I don't know, Soph. I'm trying my hardest to make sure that doesn't happen. The kids at school say we're going to lose. They say Gerard is going to win because he's rich and we're not." Her voice cracked. "Is that true? Does being rich mean you win everything?" Ethan sat beside her and pulled her close. He wanted to tell her that justice would prevail, that the system worked, that right triumphed over wrong. But he'd lived long enough to know that wasn't always true. "Sometimes money gives people advantages," he said carefully. "But it doesn't make them right. And we have something Gerard doesn't." "What?" "We have love, real love. And we have people who believe in us." He thought of Mrs. Kowalski, who'd testified on his behalf. Of his supervisor, Kevin, who'd vouched for his character despite company concerns. Of Lawrence, fighting from his hospital bed. "That counts for something." "I hope so." She leaned against him. "I really hope so." The final hearing was scheduled for late February. Both sides would present their cases, witnesses would testify, and Judge Patricia Winters would make her decision. Ethan prepared obsessively. He met with Sterling multiple times, rehearsing answers, anticipating attacks. They gathered character witnesses, teachers, neighbors, co-workers. They documented every interaction he'd had with Olivia, building a case for genuine relationship rather than opportunistic scheming. Lawrence, against doctor's orders, insisted on testifying despite his weakened condition. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood in Sophia's doorway watching her sleep, this little person who'd already been through so much loss. Now he'd dragged her into a legal battle that might end in more heartbreak. Around his neck, on a thin chain, hung Melissa's wedding ring. He'd worn it every day since her death, a reminder of vows and promises and the person he was trying to be. He touched it now, seeking strength. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," he whispered to her memory. "I hope this isn't just pride or stubbornness. I hope it's love." Morning came too quickly. Ethan dressed in his funeral suit still, his only suit, and helped Sophia into her nicest dress. Mrs. Kowalski met them at the door. With a fierce hug, "You go show them what real family looks like," she said. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building of stone and glass. News cameras lined the steps. Ethan kept his head down, holding Sophia's hand tightly as they pushed through the crowd. Inside, Sterling met them with Philip's associate. "Lawrence is already here. He looks terrible, but he refuses to leave. Olivia is with Mrs. Chen in a waiting room. She'll testify if needed." The courtroom was smaller than Ethan expected, wood-paneled and formal. Gerard sat with his attorneys on one side, looking confident and expensive. Lawrence sat behind Ethan's table in a wheelchair, oxygen tubes visible under his nose. Judge Winters entered, and everyone stood. She was a woman in her 60s, stern-faced with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The battle was about to begin. Gerard's attorney rose first, a woman named Victoria Sinclair, whose reputation preceded her. She was known for dismantling witnesses with surgical precision, and she began with opening statements that painted Ethan as a well-meaning but ultimately unsuitable guardian. "Your Honor, this case is about what's best for a vulnerable child. While Mr. Brenner's initial actions were commendable, heroism in a moment of crisis does not qualify someone to raise a child of Olivia Ashland's circumstances. She gestured toward Gerard. Mr. Gerard Ashland is blood family. He has the resources, stability, and familial connection that Mr. Brenner simply cannot provide. Sterling countered with his own opening, emphasizing the relationship built over months. Olivia's emotional well-being and Lawrence's explicit wishes. But Ethan could see the judge's expression remain neutral, unreadable. The prosecution called its first witness, a child psychologist who'd never met Olivia, but testified generally about the importance of stability and blood relations in child development. Then came a financial analyst who detailed Ethan's debts, his eviction history, his minimum wage income. Can you confirm that Mr. Brenner currently has less than $200 in his savings account? Sinclair asked. That's correct according to the financial disclosure, the analyst confirmed. And that he's been late on rent payments 7 times in the past 2 years? Yes. Each fact was technically true, but stripped of context. The medical bills, Melissa's death, the impossible choices between food and shelter. Ethan watched the judge taking notes and felt his chances slipping away. Then Gerard himself took the stand. He was 52, polished and articulate, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in 6 months. Mr. Ashland, when did you last see your niece? Sterling asked during cross-examination. It's been some time, Gerard admitted smoothly. I live in Boston, and travel has been difficult. But family isn't measured in physical proximity. It's measured in blood, in legacy, in shared history. You didn't attend her parents' funeral. A flicker of discomfort crossed Gerard's face. I was out of the country on business. By the time I heard, it was too late to return in time. You've never called Olivia, not once in 6 months. I wanted to give her space to grieve. I didn't want to intrude during such a difficult time. But you're intruding now. I'm protecting her now. Gerard's voice took on righteous conviction. When I saw the news about this arrangement, I realized my uncle was being manipulated. A stranger with financial problems suddenly having access to a $200 million trust fund. I had to act. You think Mr. Brenner is after money? I think he's a good man who found himself in over his head. But good intentions don't make someone qualified to raise an heiress. Sterling called his witnesses next. Mrs. Kowalski testified about Ethan's character, describing his dedication to Sophia, his kindness to neighbors, his integrity. Kevin from Fresh Root spoke about Ethan's work ethic and reliability. Sophia's teacher described a loving, involved father, but the most powerful testimony came from Lawrence. The wheelchair was pushed to the witness stand, and Lawrence was sworn in. He looked diminished. This man who'd seemed so imposing at their first meeting, now frail and weak. But his voice, when he spoke, carried undeniable authority. Mr. Ashland, why did you choose Ethan Brenner as guardian? Sterling asked. Because I watched him for months. I watched him parent his daughter with patience and love, despite crushing circumstances. I watched Olivia transform in his presence, from withdrawn and grieving to hopeful and happy. I watched him turn down $50,000 because taking money felt wrong to him. Lawrence paused, gathering strength. My nephew didn't visit when my son died, didn't call when Olivia was hospitalized. But the moment there was publicity, suddenly he cared about family legacy. Sinclair's cross-examination was brief but pointed. Mr. Ashland, isn't it true that your judgment may be compromised by your illness and grief? My judgment is crystal clear. I'm dying, Miss Sinclair. That focuses the mind wonderfully. I know exactly what I'm doing and why. You're aware that Mr. Brenner struggles financially? I'm aware he's struggled and persevered. That's character. What my nephew has is money, and those aren't the same thing. But wouldn't financial stability benefit Olivia? Olivia will inherit more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. What she needs is love, attention, and someone who sees her as a person rather than an asset. Ethan provides that. Gerard provides a surname. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Judge Winters gavelled for silence. When Lawrence was helped back to his wheelchair, Ethan saw the exhaustion in his face. The testimony had cost him dearly. Sterling leaned close to Ethan. We need one more thing. Something that shows Olivia's wishes clearly. She's 9 years old. Will the judge even consider her testimony? If it's genuine and unpressured, yes. But I won't call her unless you're comfortable with it. Ethan thought of Olivia in the waiting room, probably scared and confused. Putting her on the stand felt cruel, but not fighting for her felt worse. Call her, he said. There was a recess while arrangements were made. Ethan used the time to step outside, needing air and space. Sophia found him on the courthouse steps. How's it going? She asked. I don't know, sweetheart. It's hard to tell. She took his hand. You're going to win. I know you are. He wished he had her certainty. When court reconvened, Mrs. Chen brought Olivia in. The girl looked tiny, entering the formal courtroom, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found Ethan. She gave him a small, nervous smile. The bailiff helped her into the witness stand, adjusting the microphone down to her height. Judge Winters spoke gently. Hello, Olivia. I'm Judge Winters. Do you understand why you're here today? Yes, ma'am. To talk about who I want to live with when Grandpa... Her voice caught. When he's not here anymore. That's right. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer honestly. There are no wrong answers, okay? Olivia nodded. Judge Winters set aside her papers and spoke directly to the child. Olivia, do you know your Uncle Gerard? I met him a few times when I was little, at Christmas parties and things. But I don't really know him. And do you know Mr. Brenner? Olivia's face brightened. Ethan? Yes, she searched for words. He's my friend. He comes over every Saturday with Sophia. We draw together and play games. He helps me with homework. He tells really good bedtime stories when I stay over at their apartment. You've stayed at their apartment? A few times. It's small but cozy. Sophia and I share her room. Ethan makes pancakes in the morning. How do you feel when you're with Ethan and Sophia? Olivia thought about this carefully. Safe, happy, like I have a family again. Not the same as Mom and Dad, but tears filled her eyes. Like I'm not alone anymore. The courtroom was utterly silent. Judge Winters handed Olivia a tissue. If you could choose, Olivia, where would you want to live? The girl wiped her eyes and looked directly at Ethan. With Ethan and Sophia, please, they're my family now. Sinclair attempted cross-examination, but her questions felt hollow against Olivia's genuine emotion. Olivia, isn't it true that Mr. Brenner and his daughter have been very nice to you? Yes, they love me. And you enjoy spending time with them? Yes. But don't you think your Uncle Gerard could also be nice to you? Give you things, take you places? Olivia's brow furrowed. Maybe, but he doesn't know me. He doesn't know that I'm scared of thunderstorms, or that I like to draw horses, or that I can't sleep without my nightlight. Ethan knows all those things. Sinclair tried a different angle. Your grandfather has been very sick. Do you think he's been thinking clearly about what's best for you? Fire flashed in Olivia's eyes, a spirit Ethan hadn't seen before. Grandpa thinks more clearly than anyone I know. He loves me. And he knows Ethan will take care of me the way my dad would have wanted. There was nothing more to say. Sinclair dismissed the witness. As Olivia stepped down, she walked straight to Ethan and hugged him. He held her carefully, aware of dozens of eyes watching, of cameras beyond the courtroom doors. You did great, he whispered. So brave. Judge Winters called for a recess. I'll review the testimonies and evidence. We'll reconvene in 1 hour for my decision. The wait was torture. Ethan paced the hallway outside the courtroom, unable to sit still. Lawrence remained in his wheelchair, eyes closed, clearly spent. Sophia and Olivia sat together on a bench, holding hands, whispering to each other. Sterling approached with cautious optimism. Olivia's testimony was powerful. The judge seemed moved, but with Gerard's resources and blood relation argument, it could go either way. I know. Whatever happens, you fought well. You fought honorably. Ethan nodded but couldn't shake the dread in his stomach. He dragged everyone into this battle, Sophia, Lawrence, Olivia herself. If they lost, if Gerard won custody, the girls would be separated. Lawrence would die knowing his wishes were ignored, and Ethan would have to live with the failure. Mrs. Kowalski found him and wrapped him in a fierce embrace. That child loves you. Anyone with eyes can see it. The judge will do the right thing. I hope you're right. The hour crawled by. Finally, the bailiff emerged and announced the court was reconvening. Everyone filed back inside, the tension palpable. Judge Winters took her seat, her expression revealing nothing. She adjusted her glasses and reviewed her notes one final. More time before speaking. This has been a complex case, involving genuine concerns on both sides. Mr. Gerard Ashland presents a legitimate argument about family connection and financial stability. Mr. Ethan Brenner presents an equally legitimate argument about established relationship and the child's emotional well-being. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. I've reviewed all testimony, examined the evidence, and considered the relevant case law. In matters of guardianship, the paramount concern is always the best interest of the child. She paused, looking directly at Olivia. And in this case, the child has made her wishes abundantly clear. Hope flickered in Ethan's chest. While blood relation carries weight in custody decisions, it is not the sole determining factor. Mr. Gerard Ashland's sudden interest in his niece, only after publicity surrounding the guardianship proposal, raises questions about motivation. His lack of prior involvement, no visits, no calls, no presence during her grief, suggests an interest in inheritance rather than genuine familial love. Gerard's face reddened, but he remained silent. In contrast, Mr. Brenner has demonstrated consistent, loving involvement in Olivia's life over several months. Multiple witnesses testified to his character, his parenting skills, and his positive impact on the child's emotional recovery. Most importantly, Olivia herself has expressed a clear, heartfelt preference. Judge Winters lifted her gavel. Financial struggles do not disqualify someone from being an excellent parent. If they did, most of America would be ineligible. What matters is love, stability, and commitment, all of which Mr. Brenner has demonstrated repeatedly. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I hereby grant legal guardianship of Olivia Ashland to Ethan Brenner, effective immediately with provisions for regular reviews and continued therapy for the child. Mr. Gerard Ashland's petition is denied. The courtroom erupted. Gerard stood abruptly, his attorneys scrambling to calm him. Lawrence let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. Sophia squealed with joy, and Olivia burst into tears. Ethan sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Sterling gripped his shoulder. You won. You actually won. The reality hit him in waves. He'd won. Olivia was his. He was responsible for a second daughter, a billionaire's granddaughter with medical needs and trauma and a trust fund he'd never touch. The magnitude was overwhelming, but then Olivia threw herself into his arms, crying and laughing simultaneously, and Sophia joined them, and suddenly it felt less like a burden and more like a gift. Thank you, Olivia whispered against his shoulder. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Lawrence wheeled himself closer, tears streaming down his weathered face. You've given me the greatest gift, peace. I can die knowing she'll be loved. Don't talk like that, Ethan said, though they both knew the truth. I can talk however I want. I'm dying, and I just won the most important battle of my life. Lawrence reached up and clasped Ethan's hand. Take care of her. Love her. That's all I ask. I will. I promise. Gerard stormed out of the courtroom, his attorneys trailing behind making noise about appeals. Judge Winters' decision would likely face challenges, but for now, in this moment, it was final. Outside, the media swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, questions shouted from all directions. Sterling and his team formed a protective barrier around the family, but one reporter's question cut through the noise. Mr. Brenner, what do you say to people who claim you're only doing this for money? Ethan stopped and turned, looking directly at the camera. He thought about everything they'd been through, the judgment, the attacks, the scrutiny. He thought about Melissa and Lawrence and two little girls who'd lost their parents. He thought about what family really meant. I say they don't understand what money can and can't buy. Money can't buy the way Olivia laughs at Sophia's jokes. It can't buy the trust in her eyes when she's scared. It can't buy the feeling of being needed, of mattering to someone. His voice steadied. I'm not rich. I'll probably never be rich, but I'm wealthy in the ways that count. And now I have 2 daughters to prove it. The cameras kept flashing, but Ethan turned away and guided his family, his expanded, complicated, beautiful family, toward the van. Lawrence was taken by medical transport back to the estate, but not before pulling Ethan aside one last time. "Next Sunday," Lawrence said. "Family dinner at the estate. We'll celebrate properly. We'll be there." Ethan drove home with Sophia and Olivia in the back seat, both girls talking excitedly about the future, about shared bedrooms and new schools, and everything they'd do together. In his rearview mirror, he could see their faces lit with joy. His phone buzzed with a text from Sterling. "Papers will be ready to sign tomorrow. Congratulations." Another text came through. "This one from Mrs. Kowalski. I knew you'd win. Dinner at my place tonight. No arguments." Ethan smiled and touched the wedding ring hanging around his neck. "We did it, Melissa," he whispered. "We're going to be okay." For the first time in 3 years, he actually believed it. 6 months later, spring arrived with gentle rain, and the promise of new beginnings, Ethan, stood in the kitchen of their new home, a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools and a backyard where the girls could play. It wasn't the Ashland estate, but it was theirs. The trust fund designated for Olivia's care had made it possible, along with eliminating the crushing debt that had defined his life for 3 years. He wasn't wealthy. He still worked, though now as facilities manager for a community center, better hours, decent pay, health insurance. Lawrence had helped arrange the position, but Ethan had earned it through the interview. He needed that dignity, needed to know he was providing through his own efforts. Through the window, he watched Sophia and Olivia in the backyard, both muddy from helping plant a garden. Their laughter drifted through the glass, pure, unguarded, the sound of children who felt safe and loved. Olivia had grown stronger over these months. Her medications were properly managed, her therapy sessions regular. The nightmares came less frequently now. She still had hard days, moments when grief for her parents overwhelmed her, but she had family to help her through them. The girls had become true sisters, finishing each other's sentences, sharing clothes, arguing over bathroom time. Everything Ethan had hoped for and more. His phone buzzed with a text from Lawrence. "Are you coming for brunch tomorrow? Mrs. Chen is making her famous cinnamon rolls." Ethan smiled and typed back, "We'll be there at 10. Lawrence had defied his doctor's timeline. The prognosis remained grim, but he'd made it to see spring, made it to witness Olivia settling into her new life. That mattered more than medical predictions. They visited the estate twice a week now, Sunday brunch and Wednesday dinners. Lawrence treasured these gatherings, watching his granddaughter thrive, hearing her stories about school and friends and the ordinary adventures of childhood. Last week, Olivia had brought him a drawing, a family portrait showing Lawrence in his wheelchair, Ethan standing beside him with a hand on his shoulder, and the 2 girls in front, arms around each other. She'd labeled it "My Family" in careful letters. Lawrence had it framed and hung in his study. The doorbell rang, pulling Ethan from his thoughts. He opened it to find Mrs. Kowalski holding a covered dish, as always claiming she'd made too much. "Chicken soup," she announced, pressing it into his hands. "Good for growing girls. You spoil us. Someone has to." She peered past him toward the backyard. "Those 2 are covered in mud." "I know. I'll hose them down before dinner." She laughed and patted his cheek. "You're a good father, Ethan Brenner." To both of them. After she left, Ethan called the girls inside. They tracked mud across the floor, something that once would have stressed him but now just made him shake his head with amusement. "Baths. Both of you. Now." They groaned but complied, racing upstairs, arguing about who got the bathroom first. Ethan cleaned up the mud trail and started preparing dinner, falling into the comfortable rhythm of ordinary family life. Later, after the girls were bathed and fed, they gathered in the living room. It had become their evening ritual, the 4 of them when Lawrence visited, 3 when it was just them. They'd read together or watch a movie or simply talk about their days. Tonight, Olivia pulled out a large envelope she'd been hiding. "I made something," she said shyly. "For all of us." Inside was a photograph, professional quality, beautifully framed. The photographer had captured them at the estate 2 weeks ago, Ethan standing with one hand on Lawrence's shoulder, the older man seated in his wheelchair, and the girls on either side, their arms around each other. Everyone was smiling, genuine warmth evident in every face. Sophia gasped. "Olivia, when did you do this?" "Grandpa helped me arrange it. He said every family needs a portrait." She looked at Ethan nervously. "Do you like it?" He couldn't speak for a moment, emotion thick in his throat. The photo captured something he'd never thought he'd have again, the sense of belonging, of completion, of family. "It's perfect," he managed finally. "Absolutely perfect." They hung it above the fireplace, where it would be the first thing visitors saw. Not wealth or status or achievement, just a family. Complex, unusual, built by choice rather than blood, but family nonetheless. That night, after Sophia and Olivia were asleep in their shared bedroom, they'd insisted on staying together rather than taking separate rooms. Ethan stood in the hallway, listening to their breathing. The sound of two children feeling safe enough to sleep. He pulled out his wallet, now less worn thanks to financial stability, and looked at Melissa's photograph. 3 years and 7 months since cancer took her. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Sometimes it felt like a lifetime ago. "I hope I'm doing right by her," he whispered to the photo. "I hope you'd approve of this, of Olivia, of how we've changed our family." No answer came, but somehow he felt certain Melissa would have loved this, would have welcomed Olivia with open arms, would have been proud of him for choosing love over fear. He returned the wallet to his pocket and checked on both girls one more time. In their room, moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating their peaceful faces. Sophia had one arm thrown over Olivia protectively, even in sleep, watching over her sister. Tomorrow they'd go to the estate for brunch. Lawrence would tell stories about his travels when he was young. The girls would beg to swim in the indoor pool. Mrs. Chen would send them home with leftovers. It would be ordinary and precious. Ethan turned off the hall light and headed to his own bedroom. In the darkness, he touched the wedding ring still hanging around his neck, a reminder of promises kept and new promises made. He'd saved Olivia's life that November afternoon on the plaza. He'd run to a stranger in crisis and stayed when others walked away. It had been instinct, compassion, the simple choice to help someone in need. That single moment had changed everything, had brought him friendship, purpose, a second daughter, and a way out of the poverty that had been slowly crushing him. But more than that, it had taught him what he'd forgotten in the years of struggle, that kindness wasn't transactional, that family could be chosen, that wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts and everything to do with who stood beside you when life got hard. Sometimes saving someone meant they saved you right back. Ethan fell asleep thinking about tomorrow, about cinnamon rolls and laughter, and 2 little girls who called him Dad in different ways, but with the same love. Outside, spring rain continued to fall, washing everything clean, nurturing new growth, promising that even after the hardest winters, life found a way to bloom again. The story that began with a delivery driver and a collapsing child had become something neither could have predicted, a family forged in crisis, tested by judgment and ultimately proven by love, and in a modest house in Portland, with muddy footprints still faint on the floor and a family photo hanging above the fireplace. That was more than enough. It was everything.